I used to own a small Halloween-themed shop. It's located downtown in a fairly small city, and unlike many other businesses in town, after Walmart's arrival, my store never really suffered when it came to customers. Of course, it was only open for the month of October. I sold a lot of unique things you might find at other novelty stores in bigger cities, but for cheaper prices. I really didn't do it for profit as much as I did it to celebrate the spooky Halloween spirit. I also love to celebrate that spirit by doing my best to scare the crap out of people every Halloween. This particular Halloween, my chosen victim was my buddy Alex. He was a pretty relaxed and calm guy most of the time, so he was the perfect person for the plan that I had in mind. First off, you should know that I always began packing up my store every Halloween fairly early in the morning, as it was unlikely to get customers on the holiday itself. I told Alex that I had much heavier merchandise that year and could use help moving it all out. Not knowing what he was getting into, he accepted, and I told him to meet me at the shop at 10 at night, sharp. As I said before, Alex was a relaxed and calm guy most of the time. Unfortunately for him, he had once told me about his irrational fear of clowns and how he could not function around them. So naturally, my plan involved dressing up in a clown costume. When he arrived at the shop, I would stand perfectly still like a statue. Once he realized he couldn't find me, he would then call me, most likely. But when my phone rang, it would be in the pocket of what seemed to be an apparent clown statue. And when he came over to investigate, I'd give him my best scare. Pretty simple plan, right? Everything was set in motion. I dressed up, stood near the back of the store, obscured by some boxes and other decorations, and waited for his arrival. A little after 10, Alex entered. It was very dark, and I'd made the last-minute decision to turn the lights out before he arrived. He called my name a few times, but of course I didn't respond. I heard him walking around a bit, looking around the shop for me. I could barely hold back my laughter. After a bit more shuffling, I heard Alex speak in a defensive tone. "Not funny, dude." I looked around, but there was definitely no way he could see me right now, even if I had twitched or anything, so I continued to play dumb. "Come on, man," he repeated again, sounding angrier this time. "That's not funny." Confused, I quietly adjusted a nearby stack of boxes so I could peer through a crack towards his voice. I couldn't make out his shape very well, but I knew for sure he was not looking in my direction. Suddenly my phone rang. I heard Alex turn towards the sound instantly, and I froze, giddy with excitement that the plan might be working. But as he approached, I realized he wasn't holding his phone, and a wave of disappointment fell over me as I discovered my prank had been ruined by another caller. "Alright, fine, you got me," I announced, shortly after the phone stopped ringing. Taking off my mask and stepping out into the open. But Alex's face didn't look relieved. His face twisted in such horror that I had never seen before. He began yelling and spouting panicky words, and I spent a few minutes trying to get him to calm down. He explained to me that when he entered, a man in a clown costume had stared at him and began walking slowly towards him. But when my phone rang, the man had dashed right out of the store. Alex had no idea that I was actually hiding in the back the whole time. I don't want to think about what would have happened if Alex hadn't showed up late that night, or if my other buddy had never called during the prank. This happened to me during my college's Halloween celebration a few years ago, and is the most terrifying experience of my life. One of my roommates, some friends, and myself left to go to a party around dusk. We were catcalled by a group of 3 drifters, or homeless people. We thought nothing of it and went on our merry way. About 4 hours later, we were going back to our apartment to change shoes. High heels and messed up streets are hell when you've been drinking. When one of the drifters calls out to me, "Hey beautiful, how about a kiss?" Me being a little drunk and sassy, I reply, "No thanks, girls are more my type." To my shock and horror, he says, "Hey, my friend here likes the ladies." A homeless girl comes out of nowhere and proceeds to kiss me on the mouth. My friend picks me up and throws me over his shoulder. I proceeded to flip the fuck out in my apartment, shrug it off, and then we ventured back out. Well, I got separated from my group in the crowd, and then I see the 3 drifters again. I tried not to show the fact that I'm shitting bricks when they ask me where they can find a liquor store. I pointed down the street to the Kroger's and they said, "Okay, can you show us?" I'm a small town woman, and they shoved me into their vehicle. I thought, naively at the time, that they will literally let me out at the grocery store, except it was closed because it was after midnight. I pleaded for them to let me out of the car, but they kept saying, "The power does what it wants," and headed away from the safety of the campus area, onto the freeway, and out of the state. For the next 4 hours, I visited 3 states with them, while pleading for my life. I'll never forget how they kept saying the power does what it wants, and talking about how they're going to have fun with me. I kind of resigned myself to the fact that I was going to die, that I would never graduate college, or see my family again. They pulled into a gas station and I slipped out of the vehicle only to be grabbed again. But I screamed my head off for the clerk to help. That's when they started talking about taking me to the cliff. I mentioned that my family is full of police officers and that they're probably already looking for me, how they're committing a federal crime, and that I won't press charges if they take me back to campus. I guess that was when the girl started to feel sorry for me, because she started to say, "Guys, she's really scared. Maybe we should just drop her off somewhere. This doesn't have to get any worse." They took me back to the campus area, and as soon as the girl pulled me out of the car, a police officer called my name. The girl shoved me toward the cop and yelled, "The power does what it wants, and tonight it lets you live." I've never been so happy to sit in a police cruiser. They pursued them, but I don't know if they ever caught them. My roommate dropped out of college and joined the military, and I transferred to another school. So, ladies and gentlemen, please be careful walking at night. Always keep your cell phone with you, if possible, and call the police if you see suspicious people near your apartment. I had a brush with death, and I'm so grateful for the time I have now. This incident happened to me last year on Halloween. My little brother and I were home alone since our parents had gone out to a Halloween party. They had tasked us with handing out candy to the trick-or-treaters. This bummed my brother and I out because we had plans to go trick-or-treating with a few friends. Our parents told us that we were too old to still be trick-or-treating, and that we could instead invite our friends over to the house and hang out there. My friends declined my invitation to come over because they still wanted to go trick-or-treating. So, that left me home alone with my brother, handing out candy. A lot of people stopped by our house, and by 10 o'clock almost all of the candy was gone. My brother and I decided that we'd eat the rest. We were sitting on the couch, watching a scary movie, stuffing ourselves with candy, when there was a knock at the door. I stormed off the couch, wondering who the hell could be knocking at the door this late. I assumed that it was just some late trick-or-treaters. Even if that was the case, I had turned the porch light and Halloween decorations off, which should have been a dead giveaway that we were out of candy or that we weren't home. So, I assumed it was my parents. Being cautious, I looked through the peephole and saw a suspicious man standing on our front porch. He was wearing a black hoodie with the hood over his head, which made it difficult to see his face. The only detail I could spot was that he had a beard and dry, crusty lips. There was no way that this guy was a trick-or-treater because he wasn't wearing a costume, and he was far too old to be trick-or-treating alone. His hands were stuffed in the front pocket of his hoodie. He looked very thin. Every single red flag went off in my head about this guy. There was no way in hell I was going to open the door. Still looking through the peephole, I watched as he knocked on the door again. He seemed desperate for us to open it, and was shaking a bit. It wasn't cold outside. Definitely not cold enough for someone to be trembling. He was giving me a really bad vibe, and I wanted to get rid of him as soon as possible. "We're out of candy," I shouted to him. I watched as a smile spread across his face. It wasn't a friendly smile either. "Are you alone in there?" the man asked, almost in a mocking voice. His voice was raspy and dry. "Should I call the police?" my little brother asked, quietly, gripping his cell phone. The man let out a low grumble and said, "Sounds like you're not alone in there." I continued to watch him through the peephole. His hands were still wedged tightly in his pocket, and he was still shaking a bit. I began to wonder if he was armed. I decided to take action and spoke to him in the most intimidating voice I could. "Get the fuck away from my house, or I'll call the police," I shouted. His smile faded, and he bared his teeth. They were piss yellow. I concluded that he was probably some homeless crackhead. He had a look of fury plastered on his face. Fortunately, he left without trying to break in. Probably because he knew I wasn't fucking around with him. I didn't stop watching him, though, through the peephole until I saw him completely off of our property. My brother and I breathed a sigh of relief and decided not to call the police. My brother and I were a bit paranoid after this and watched TV until our parents came home. We didn't tell them about the man, since he hadn't really tried to harm us. Now when I think back to this, I wish we would have called the police, because maybe we would have been able to prevent a murder. You see, the next day, we found out that the elderly woman who lived a few houses down from us had been brutally murdered. Her neighbor had found her lying on her front porch, covered in blood. She had been stabbed multiple times in the chest and neck. My brother and I immediately knew who had done it, and we told the police what we knew. They couldn't do much from the information we had given them, since we hadn't seen many details of his face. They went on a hunt for the man, but never caught him. I blame myself for that poor old lady's murder, because I could have prevented it from happening just by calling the cops. I think the most disturbing thing of all is the fact that he didn't take anything from the old lady's house. Her house had been left untouched, but he could have gone in and taken whatever he wanted since her door was wide open. And this means he just wanted to kill. That was his only intention. He didn't want money or jewelry. He only had the urge to murder. So, to the creepy crackhead Halloween slasher, let's not meet. This happened 2 years ago on Halloween. My mother, stepdad, and I were staying at the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California for the Dark Harbor annual Halloween Fest. I was 18 at the time. For those of you who don't know, the Queen Mary is a pretty well-known, reportedly haunted ship and attraction. It's open all year around, and is a hotel now permanently docked in Long Beach. We get down to the Queen Mary in the late afternoon before the Halloween festival starts. My mom and my stepdad realize they've forgotten their costumes at home, so they decide to hightail it back, about an hour and a half away, since my mom is a major Halloween lover, and then come right back. I decide to stay in our hotel room. Our room had reports of strange experiences, so being that I was, and still am, super interested in the paranormal, I decided to conduct my own amateur EVP session on my iPhone and ask some basic questions. After a few minutes, I stop recording and play it back. At around 30 seconds, I had said, "Say something, I am here to listen." There was a pause of white noise, and then a distinctive whisper that sounded like, "Hey." Now the walls of the room of the Queen Mary are rather thin. You can hear people talking as they go down the halls, but they have that muffled, on the other side of the wall quality. And this response on my recording sounded closer in the room, and was pretty clear, not to mention an intelligent response to my statement. But it was just a whisper, and I doubt you would be able to hear a whisper from the other side of the wall during the day. I was excited and showed my mom and stepdad when they got back. They also heard it and agreed with my thoughts. Then we just go out at night and enjoy the Halloween festivities of mazes and costume contests, and head back into the ship hotel. At midnight, we go out and do what many guests do and explore the ship at night to see if we experience anything paranormal. We walk around many of the floors of the ship, hoping to see the infamous Lady in White. We go up to the most haunted room, B340, which is closed down now and cleared out. There is a thin slit in the middle of the door that you can see into the room though, so I peered in, nervously imagining a black figure popping up at me, but I didn't see anything. However, I did suddenly begin to feel very lightheaded and uneasy. I stepped away from the door and out into the hall, and suddenly felt fine again. I don't know if that was anything, but I thought I'd mention it anyways. Finally, we're back in our room to turn in for the night, and this is where things get real creepy. When you first enter the room, it's the master bedroom. To the bed's left is a doorway and a small hallway that leads down to the twin bedroom, where two twin beds are against the wall facing each other, and the bathroom is in the back. Now, I was supposed to sleep in that twin bedroom alone. I had read online before that the reports in our room happened in only the twin bedroom and bathroom part, so at first I was like, no way. I chose to sleep in the master bed with my mom and stepdad. I was on the left side of the bed closest to the hallway to the twin bedroom. My mom was in the middle, my stepdad on the right. Just looking into the twin bedroom gave me the chills. It looked so eerie, dark, and cold. I slept on the right side with my back to the twin bedroom the whole time. I could not bring myself to face it in the night. At around 3 or so a.m., I started hearing movement in that bedroom, just like shuffling and a bump into the dresser. I felt really unsettled and definitely felt as if something was behind me in the hallway moving. You know that sensation where you can't see it, but you can feel something present, occupying the emptiness. My eyes were wide, but I absolutely refused to turn to look in there. I was sure it wasn't someone out in the halls because it sounded literally right behind me, not on the other side of the wall. Also, it was 3 in the morning, and if someone was outside, you would hear the footsteps moving away. But no, this was in one place in the room. I stopped. I dozed a little, but then I shit you not, I heard clear as day this creepy jewelry box playing music in the room, right at my left corner foot of the bed. Then I hear it move around in front of the bed, over to the right corner, and then it stopped. But as it was playing, I felt and saw my stepdad sit up. So I say, "Do you hear it?" He says yeah, and my mom mumbles sleepily, "The music?" I say yeah, it stopped and we didn't hear it again, but I stayed awake for the rest of the night. In the morning, my stepdad and I recount the jewelry box music excitedly, yet also shakily. My mom, however, does not remember hearing it at all, even though she half awoke and said the music when I asked if my stepdad heard it. Being that she was half awake, I assume she just simply forgot it. Once again, I do not think it was from outside our room in the hallway, because it sounded clear as a bell, and literally right at the foot of our bed, moving to the right side of it. It was not muffled, and I did not hear footsteps or talking in the hallway at this time. Also, who would be playing a jewelry box that late, or even at all? All in all, it was a fun trip, exciting, but super scary. The most scared I've ever actually been. So if you like scary or paranormal stuff as much as I do, I encourage you to stay at the Queen Mary.